In this video, we'll cover the manual installation of WordPress. So to start out, go to wordpress.org/download, and it'll take you to this page. And what you're looking for is the Download WordPress 3.2.1 button here. Now you might have a different version. Just download whatever version's here. That'll be the most recent. So click on the button, and it's going to ask you to open this zip file. So we'll go ahead and say yes. And now we have a WordPress folder. So I'm going to minimize this, and I'm just going to move the WordPress folder to the desktop. And there it is. So now you can close out of your zip program. Let's go back to the WordPress page. On this page, look for this link right here, a handy guide for installation. On this page, let's first look at the address up here, just in case you'd rather get to it by typing it in the URL bar. You can type codex.wordpress.org/installing_WordPress. And let's scroll down just a little bit. Here we can see there's a link to the famous 5-minute install. Let's click on that. That just takes us down the page a little bit. And this is a very brief overview of how to install WordPress, and it does require that you have some knowledge about files and how to modify files. So I'm going to make the assumption that that might be a little bit advanced for where some of the students are that are going to be watching this video. So we'll be looking at this along with some of the more detailed steps, and I'll walk you through how you'll actually accomplish the manual install. So let's take a look here. The very first thing that we need to do is download and unzip the WordPress package if we haven't already, and we did do that. So we can move on to step 2, which is to create a database for WordPress on the web server, as well as a MySQL user who has all the privileges for accessing and modifying it. Now it's this particular step that trips up most people. So I'm going to show you how to create a database, and in the process of creating the database, we'll need to create that user. So let's log into our web host's back office, and for us, let's just go to the bookmarks and use the bookmark that we'd set up. Close the bookmarks and enter the username and password. To create a database, we'll need to scroll down to the database section and look for something called MySQL databases. Now I know this is the same between HostGator and Bluehost, but if you have a different service, you may have to look, or you might need to call your web host in order to figure out how to create a MySQL database. So let's just go ahead and click on that, and I'm going to scroll down here. Okay. So the very first thing it asks us to do is to create a new database. Now the reason that you have to do this is because WordPress is going to generate information that has to be stored somewhere, and it stores it in these MySQL database tables. So first need a database in order to create the tables, and when posts are created or comments are created, those all will go into this database that we're creating right now, and all of the tables that go along with it. So I'm just going to name it my website name. Which is a little long. You can shorten that up if you want to make a shorter version of it. That's perfectly fine. And I'm going to click Create Database. Now it says it's added the database, it gives it the name, and I'm going to go back. I'm going to scroll down. Okay, now we have two databases in here. You can see that we already have this database, which was created when we did the quick install, and we manually created this database right here. Now one other thing I want to show you is that the database that we created for the quick install already has a user in it, but we don't have a user assigned to this database, and that is something that we must do. So I'm going to show you how to add a new user. We already have one user available, and you can see that right here. I've got it shrouded out so you can't see everything, but this one was automatically created during the quick install process. That's the nice thing about the quick install, is it does all these things for you. It creates the database, it creates the user, and it links it all together. So let's say I don't like this particular username and I want to do something different. I'm just going to give it my name, give it a password, and then you would click Create User. Before I do that though, I do want to point out that you can randomly generate a password by clicking this password generator button, but I like to pick my own passwords. Okay, so click Create User. Now it tells you that this user has been created with this password. So let's go back, scroll down, and now we're going to go to this last section, Add User to Database. So first off, we want to be sure that we pick the right user, and this is the one that I just created. That's the one I want to assign. Now I need to choose the correct database. So you can see that this is the one that I just manually created. This is the one that was created earlier using the quick install. So both selections are good. I'm just going to click Add. Now you have to select the permissions or privileges, and generally I just select all, which is right there, or you can choose to have some selected and some not selected, but I like to have all privileges. And actually, reading the instructions from the WordPress installation, it did tell us that we did have to set this user to all privileges. So let's go ahead and click Make Changes. Now we have this user was added to this database. Click Go Back. And I'll just scroll down a little bit. So now we can see that we have two databases. Here's the one that we manually created, and now the user is there. So now what you'll need to do is you will need to remember the database name, so you'll need to write that down, and you'll need to remember the username. That's very important. You'll need both of those pieces of information in order to have the installation work out correctly. Most of the time what I'll do though is I'll just leave this page open as I'm installing WordPress. That way, in case I wrote it down incorrectly or I forgot, I can always come over here and copy and paste if that's easier. So let's go back to the WordPress instructions, and we have just completed step 2. We've created the database, added the user with all privileges. As you read this, step number 3, it says rename the wp-config-sample.php file to wp-config.php. So many of you might be wondering, well, where is this file and how do I do that? What we'll need to do is open up the file folder that we put on our desktop so we can find this wp-config-sample file. So I'm going to minimize this for a second, and here's our WordPress file folder. Let's open that up. And we are looking for the wp-config-sample. Now we just need to remove the sample part and click anywhere in the white space. Open up the browser again. Now let's move on to step 4. It says open the wp-config.php in a text editor, which you should have already downloaded by now, Notepad++, and fill in your database details explained in editing wp-config.php. So I'm going to click at this hyperlink and scroll down a little bit, and this will take us to the section on how to modify the wp-config.php file. Okay, so let's minimize this for a second. Now we need to open this file. Now I'm not using Notepad++ on my computer, I'm using a different text editor, but use whatever text editor you have, it doesn't matter. And let's go back to the instructions. Okay, what we need to look at is the database name. So that's the database name used by WordPress. That is the name of the database that we just manually created. Now we have the database username. That is the name of the user that we associated with the database we just created. And here's the password that we just set up, and then the database host. Let's go back to our text editor. What we're looking for is this part right here, the database name. So the database name goes here. So let's go back. Unless you wrote this down, you can always just put it in that way. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to copy the database name. And I'm going to go to the text editor. And you very carefully highlight what I need highlighted. And then paste. Now we need the database username, who is the user. So we'll go back here, and here's the user, otherwise known as the username. Copy that, and carefully highlight and paste. Now the password, I just happened to remember that, so I'm going to type that in. And you can see that the database host is listed as localhost. Now we're going to leave that alone for now and see if we can get it to work with localhost, because 99% of the time that is the correct database host name. If it's not, then you might have to call your web host and find out what the name of the database host actually is. For the database character set, we're not going to change that. UTF-8 is generally correct. And for the database collate, we're just going to leave that alone. So that's all we should need here. Let's go ahead and save that. And let's go back to the instructions. I'm going to go back now that we've just completed that detailed set of instructions and scroll down a little bit. Now it says upload the WordPress files to the desired location on your web server. So this is really similar to what we were talking about when we did the quick install. We have to decide if we want to install WordPress as our primary website, which would reside at the root level of your web host, or if we want to install it below an existing website you might already have. Since I've already shown you an example of how to install WordPress at the root level of your web host, which if you're not sure what I'm talking about, go back and watch the quick install video for WordPress. That will explain how that works. What I'm going to do here is take advantage of the opportunity to show you how to set WordPress up a level below your main website. So a good example of that might be someone who already has an e-commerce website and maybe they want to add a blogging component. So what they'll do is have their e-commerce site, and then they might have a tab on their site that says My Blog. And if they click on that tab, it will take them to this WordPress installation, and I'll show you how to do that at some point in the future. So that's what we're going to do, and I think that may be applicable to a lot of folks. Okay, to move forward, I'm assuming that you've already downloaded all of the other tools that we've spoke about, and what I'm going to be specifically using is the FTP program, File Transfer Protocol program, called FileZilla. So let's go ahead and minimize this and open up our FileZilla. Now I'm just going to get right into using FileZilla because I'm assuming that you've already watched the FileZilla download and installation video and you're ready to start using it. So let's go ahead and connect to our web host. And open it up. And we'll go down to public HTML in this case. Now remember, not all web hosts are the same. Sometimes they're a little bit different. And HostGator and Bluehost pretty typically use public HTML folder. GoDaddy, I believe, just uses this folder up here. So it may depend on your host, but get familiar with how your host does it. Call them up and ask them if you need to. But if you've got a Bluehost or HostGator account, you should be able to follow along exactly as I'm showing you here. Okay, now you can see that we've already got some folders in here: WP admin, WP content, WP includes. Those are all from the quick install of WordPress. In fact, if I go up here and highlight the public HTML folder, you can see that there are a number of files. That's what these are. These are files, not folders, and they all have this WP hyphen in front of them. Those are all WordPress files as well that were downloaded when we installed WordPress via the quick install process. So if you've never installed WordPress in the quick install process, you would not have any of these folders here, and you would not have any of these files here. Okay, yours would be blank. And if you wanted to, you could just move all the folders and files. I'm gonna open this up a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. We're going to open up this WordPress folder. I'm going to change the view to list. So what you'll notice is that we have, you can see these three folders here: WP admin, content, and includes. That's those three right here. And then we have a number of files, and that's all these files down here. So if I did want to put WordPress as my main website, in other words, for me it's createawordpresswebsite.com, that's right at this level, right at the public HTML level. So all I would need to do is select the first item, hold down my shift key, select the last item, and now I've got all of the files and folders highlighted. I could just move those over into the public HTML folder, and it would accomplish what you see here with all of these folders and files being located at this particular level. Now what I want to do though is I want to create a sub-level, and this assumes that, say for instance, you've got an e-commerce site already at the public HTML level, which is the same thing as saying the level of your website. So for instance, if your website's xyz.com, that is the public HTML level. Now I realize this may be a little bit confusing for people who don't understand how web hosts have their files organized, but just know that if you see public HTML and somebody types in your website, that is the file folder that they go to look for all the files to make your website work. Okay, so to put WordPress in a folder below this level, such as in a My Blog level, let's go ahead and click on public HTML, and I'm going to use my right mouse button, and I'm going to create a directory. Creating a directory is just like creating a new folder. So click on that, and I'm going to give the name My Blog. You can name it whatever you want, it's really not important, and click OK. Now you can see I've got a new folder here called My Blog, and I clicked on it, and this shows the contents of my blog, and there's nothing there. So now what we want to do is upload all of this WordPress stuff over here into my blog. So now that I've got it highlighted, I'm just going to grab it and pull it over and drop it into my blog. I'm going to minimize this while that's working and expand this again. And you can see down here it says the queued files, there's 912, and it's going down because it's moving those folders from the WordPress folder over to the My Blog folder. Okay, now we've got all of our files and folders downloaded. I can see everything that got downloaded right here. Or you can open up this particular folder and expand it, and you can see the three primary folders, and then of course all the stuff is still down below. So let's go ahead and minimize this and go back to the instructions. And now we're just about there. We just completed number 5, which was to upload the WordPress files to the desired location. So let's go down to 6. It says run the WordPress installation script by accessing WP admin install.php in a web browser. So what that's going to mean is we're going to follow one of these two instructions below. If you install WordPress in the root directory, which we did not, we would do this. But we did this one here. It says if you install WordPress in its own subdirectory called blog, and we called it my blog. For example, you could visit http:// our website's name, and then my blog, and then we're going to put wp admin install.php. So to make things easy, I'm just going to copy this. Now let's open up a new tab. Okay, so up in the browser bar, I'm going to type in my website plus my blog, and then I'm going to paste in the information I just copied. So I have to go http:// create a WordPress website.com. Now I have to go to the subfolder or subdirectory, which we named my blog, another /, and then I'm going to paste in the information I had copied, wp-admin /install.php, and I should be able to hit enter. And now it's going to ask you for some information, which is good news because this means that we got the files in the right spot. So we're going to give our site a title. I'm going to call this Create a WordPress Website Blog. Now you can put in whatever name you like, it doesn't really matter. This is what will show up in the header of your blog, at least initially, and it can be changed at a later date. So for the username, I'm just going to leave it admin for now, but you could rename it and create whatever username you wanted. And then for the password, create your password. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. And you need an email. No matter what you do, you're going to need an email before you do any of this stuff. And if you don't already have an email, be sure that you go back through the creating an email video so that you've got somewhere that you can send this email to, or maybe you've got an email outside of your web host already. Either one will work. Just use an email that something can be sent to you. I'm going to use an email that's outside of the hosting system because I don't have that set up in my Microsoft Outlook yet. So I'm going to use an email that's just really easy for me to access, and that's support@prestatraining.com. And then here you'll see there's a tick box, allow my site to appear in search engines like Google and Technorati. You want to be sure that's checked, so that's good. Install WordPress. And it says success. It was that easy, which compared to the one-click install is not very easy, but it's still relatively easy compared to some programs. So let's click login. And here's our username. And here we are. Now we're in the back office or the dashboard of Create a WordPress Website Blog. So I want to show you up on the URL bar. Here's the primary website for me, createawordpresswebsite.com. Now I've got another website right here at my blog. So I can have, say for instance, an e-commerce website at this level, createawordpresswebsite.com, and then I can have the blog that's associated with that e-commerce website at this level, which is the My Blog level. And the WP admin, that's basically just how you get in and change all your settings. It's called a dashboard or back office. Depending on the programs that you've used in the past, people call it different things. I like to call it the back office, but they call it the dashboard. It all means the same thing. It's just the area that you go to set everything up that you want set up for people to see. It's where you add posts, it's where you create pages, it's where you change settings. So let's see what this looks like from your customer's point of view. Let's go and open up a new tab, and first I'm going to go to createawordpresswebsite.com. Okay, and now we've got the createawordpress.com website, and this is just the standard WordPress installation that we did in the quick install video. Okay, now and ultimately we would have some sort of a menu button here that could lead us to the My Blog. So just imagine there's a menu button and we clicked it. Ultimately what would happen is it would take us to the next level, which is My Blog. Go ahead and click Enter. And here you'll notice that this is different. Create a WordPress website blog. The other one, let's go back, was just create a WordPress website. So those are two distinct installations of WordPress. And this is where you can have your blogging platform set up to where you'll create your posts, create different pages for interesting stuff that you might want to have separate from your primary website. Okay, that's all there is to installing WordPress. So now this video has shown you the manual method of doing it, and a previous video showed you the one-click install. So one of the two of those methods should work for you, and if it doesn't, feel free to contact me and we can figure out what issues you're having and how to solve those issues. So now you're all ready to move on to the next phase of your education, which is to start working with WordPress, to start creating content and getting that content onto WordPress so you can create a great looking website. So I'll look forward to seeing you in the videos that follow.